tell me we've been on.
Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Today's date is March 19th, Friday. I'm sorry. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's 9:30 a.m. We're going to begin our posted agenda. The first item we have this morning is from the auditor. Okay. Second item is from the treasurer.
Okay, Judge, just pass one, just pass this down. I have the financial report for the month ending February 28th of 2021. If I go to the third page, the monthly closing balance is $24,549,006.20. I hereby certify that this report is true and correct and request that you place it in minutes.
Any questions about the financial statement?
Our employee benefit plan's looking a little better.
It is,
Yeah.
and I was showing Judge yesterday, I received an email where we're gonna get, was it 618,000?
Put it back kind of where it should be.
Yeah, we're, on those stop losses.
We were looking, when we do that, it's gonna bring it back to close to $1 million.
Yeah.
All right. No other questions? All right.
Okay, my next item, Judge, is the affidavit just stating that the court has received, reviewed, and approved the financial report to be placed in the newspaper.
Okay. Any questions about this affidavit? All righty. Thank you. All right. I have Petersburg Financial report for the EMS. They show a total revenue for the month of February, $2,592. Total expenses $8,144.24 for a difference of a negative $5,552.24. Year to date, total revenue $12,030.33. Total expenses $17,605.92 for a year to date difference of minus $5,575.51. For the month of February, they had 4 dispatches within the city limits, 4 billable runs, and that was their total for February. All right. Any questions on the Petersburg EMS report? All right. If not, then we'll vote on that on Monday. Let's see. The next is a 5310 funding for Sparta Transportation. I received a letter from, Eric Gleason from the Public Transportation Division of the Texas Department of Transportation. He needed a letter of support for the funding for the Sparta Transportation. And so I enclosed the following letter dated March 1st. Dear Mr. Gleason, Hale County works closely with Spartan Transportation as a vital resource of transportation services. Many in our community rely heavily on the daily transportation needs to various appointments such as emergency care facilities, doctors, specialists, jobs, school, grocery stores, and many other activities. These funds will also assist the transit program in securing funds to maintain quality, safe, and comfortable transit mobility vehicles. The life support of Hale County relies on the transit mobility, and Spartan Transportation has been a vital lifeline to our community. As Judge, I encourage TxDOT to fully fund Sparta Transportation Section 5310 program. So, like I said, if we producing a letter to them like that, I felt like I needed to bring it to court and have y'all be aware of it and vote on it. So, I do know that they do provide, like I say, some people's the only way around to get around. So, like I say, we certainly want to fund Any questions on it? Okay, Rocio went ahead and put this on today's agenda. It's an agreement plan for the lower running water draw site for rehab. We're gonna have some people here Monday to talk to us about it. I wish Melinda or Jim was here. You know, this thing started back in 2014, and, you know, and now we're at the point where they're wanting to build the dam. And so, they're gonna come to us and talk about the project, and, we need to talk to them about the county's financial responsibility to the project. The duration of the project, how long is it gonna last? He did tell us in a phone meeting last week that the county and city's part of the money would be something that would be due at the end of it, because it's like a 65-35 matching fund. The federal government gives them 65% of the funds, the state gives them 30, and then the locals make up the 5%. And so, just from what I could understand, when we talked about last week, our part of it's looking at like $40,000. And so, but if this project's gonna last and not be completed until next year, then it may be something we could look at budget time, budgeting in 22 budget to pay our part of it.
And the city will have a like amount?
Yes.
Actually, I understood that this project probably kind of got put on hold this last year because of COVID and related issues, so.
Yeah, I think they fully intended on building the dam, or starting the project last year, but because of COVID couldn't. And they're under some type of timeline with the state funding. And so, that's why they're proceeding like they are. So, like I say, come Monday prepared to, if you have questions for them, be sure to ask when those people from the watershed committee are here, because they have a lot more knowledge on it than I do. Because like I said, me and Jimmy come into this deal late. You know, we took all this being representatives for the county when we got elected. But like I say, this began back in 2014, and so we'll have those people here Monday to talk to us. Next item on the agenda for today is the sheriff's office.
Good morning.
Morning, Dave.
Personnel, I would like to do some changing around the passing of A.J. Mahler. I'd like to leave that chief deputy spot on the books, but unfunded. And I would like to create a jail administrator and an assistant jail administrator, and promote two people that has been vital in the last year during COVID, stepped up. I'd like to promote George Bernal to jail administrator, and Debbie Allenese to assistant jail administrator. And the raises would be as follows. George Bernal is currently at a 1423 as lieutenant in jail, which is equal to an 1815 on our pay schedule. I'm requesting George Bernal be moved to an 1817, which is a 5% increase, and his title now would be jail administrator. The bi-monthly rate would be $2,087.01. I would like this position to include exempt status, and the effective date would be 2/18/21, and that is when George obtained his jail administrator license. Debbie Allenese is at a 1419, which is equal to an 1811 on pay schedule. I'm requesting Debbie be moved to an 1813, which would be a 5% increase, and her title now be assistant jail administrator. Bi-monthly rate of $1890.73. I would like this to be an exempt status, and both positions would be eligible for a 6 and 1 year raise from the time of their promotion, and kind of get some structure in the jail as far as.
Hers also on the 18th.
Hers would be, Judge, I'm sorry, she obtained her jail administrator license 3/5/21.
Okay, all right.
both of these are longtime county employees. They've
Yes,
both
sir.
been our-
George Bernal has been jail lieutenant under AJ for all these years. He's really stepped up, and I think he deserves a shot at it. And I think he'll do good at it.
Could you give me Debbie's pay? And I do want to say something to the court. That is not an exempt position, the assistant administrator.
Is it not?
No, sir.
It's not exempt.
It's 1890.73.
No. Okay. Can I have that? No?
You can make copy of it.
Okay.
And I'll get-
Okay. Yeah, it's not an exempt position, because you had that prior to, sheriff, judge, when he was sheriff, he had, those positions, and then he changed it.
Okay.
And at that time, Delata was the jail administrator, and it was not an exempt position.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any questions of David?
So that just means that she didn't have the authority to fire, only George does. And of course, it can come and go.
Well, of course, the biggest issue is her time.
Overtime, I understand that, yeah. But it's not, because she falls under him.
Yeah.
To give.
George would be exempt, but Debbie wouldn't be exempt.
That's correct.
Okay, okay. No, I'm bothering you now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions of David or comments? No? All right,
Did
Thank
you, want Jim to speak about the?
Yeah,
draw
Jim, I
side?
was talking to him before you walked in about that running water draw, and told him we were gonna have someone here Monday to talk about it, and I told him that this was a project that went back to like 2014, and that Jimmy and I sort of were involved in it since we come on to the court, but there hadn't been lots of activity, mainly because of COVID. But that, my understanding, it was like a 65% funded deal, 65 fed, 30 state, and 5% local. And that there was some type of time crunch coming up with the state funding, that was the reason they were trying to move forward with it.
Right. My understanding is there's a May 28th deadline for them to have the local sponsor agreements signed, and otherwise they'll lose the state funding. And the problem with that is the state's kicking in maybe $1.5 million or something. And so if you don't have that, then the county and city are gonna have to look at, making that up versus, probably now maybe, I think they're thinking maybe $30,000 a piece for the county and city share in this deal. So that's kind of the deadline I think that's coming up. I had hoped they would be sending me the agreement that y'all would be looking at, and I haven't gotten that yet, so I don't know, I guess the judge hadn't either, so.
I do have some documentation that Rocio got from, I do have the agreement, Jim, let me give it to you.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I would ask them to send it to me as well.
It was part of what they sent to get on the agenda, and so I'll give you this copy.
Basically, this is a deal, if we were ever, if we ever get enough rain and that dam that's out there breaks, and that, the city and whatever out in the county floods, if we haven't taken care of keeping this up, we could look at some liability. That's a lot of ifs, but if you look at the maps that they've included in the prior, engineering studies and stuff, that inundation area is pretty large. And, like I say, if we get enough rain. But, and that's about all I know about it. It is something in the past the court has voted to. We've sent in letters saying, yeah, we're on board to support this and things like that. But at this point, A, there's not an agreement for us to actually do anything, and B, there's nothing in the budget at this point, so y'all would have to, and I think, so y'all would have to do a budget amendment. But the other thing is, I think that this is something that even if they get started this year, I don't think we're necessarily looking at any actual expenditure until maybe next year or at the end of the project. So it's not something that's gonna have to be paid, like next week or so. We've just never gotten to the point of actually saying, yeah, we're gonna obligate, X number of dollars to this deal, so.
Any questions, Jim?
Don't have any questions, but I know it seems kind of odd to be worrying about a dam here in this country, but if you've lived here long enough, you remember back in the day when it has served a good purpose. And back in 2010 probably was the last time we had the 100-year floods. But it does rain here sometimes, and when it does, that dam plays a big role. So we really.
Well, they have some neat pictures of, back in the day. I can remember my parents telling me about a house floating in front of
I remember
Dairy
that.
Queen, where Dairy Queen's on Fifth Street.
Yeah.
And then they had enough water there that a house was floating down Fifth Street.
That was back before that dam was there.
Yeah.
Where's the dam at?
Right out here in Jimmy's precinct, the first one.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about this to me is it's actually kind of like on the branch of
White
the
River.
draw. I think it's not actually what I would think
White
is the
River.
main draw. There's one on up, I guess number 3 is on up a little further west, but then it's coming down there.
Well, there's actually 4.
So, yeah, this is number 4 dam, I think, so.
It's on W6.
So, but anyway, they'll be here Monday. Hopefully, I'm sorry, Jim, like I said, Jim will have a chance to look to the
I'll look
agreement
it up.
by then, and we'll visit with them. And
Okay.
see what, because like I said, I do know that they are under some type of time constraints about getting things lined up. So,
And I think the Soil and Water Conservation District is gonna be the entity that manages the grant and keeps all that going, so, the auditor will be doing it. And there's a outfit, M&E, something or another, that does this sort of thing, kinda like on our, for the halfway water supply district, kind of manages the contracts and makes sure everything's lined up and like it should be, so
Okay.
I'll be working with them. So, if y'all have any questions, let me know.
okay, thank you, Jim. All right, and then the last item we have for today's agenda is Commissioner Precinct 4.
Yeah, we, usually we have one auction a year, and it's usually to get rid of some things that, like Sheriff's Office usually has 3 vehicles, and then precincts or somebody usually has something they want to sell, so we just have to get permission to put all this stuff on auction, so.
Okay. Do you have a time frame that you're looking at?
Not yet.
Okay.
And that'll be through Lone Star.
Yeah, Long Star auction.
Okay. Any questions about the auction? All righty then. And so that concludes our agenda.
Judge.
Yes.
I do have, I don't know, Jim, can we call an executive meeting immediately if we want? I'd like to visit with the court and with the sheriff about these changes because they're not really making sense, according to the policy and the schedule. So, could we do that?
You can, the court can go into executive session at any point as long as you identify the exemption, but I don't know that you can do it unless you're specifically, I know we're talking about some actual people are involved, but I don't think if you're just talking about the position itself, I don't know that qualifies versus talking about, personnel matter where maybe you have misconduct or
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
something private, if that makes sense, so.
I'm open to talk in public, I don't have a problem with that. I just feel like, I was looking at what he had wrote. Now, the sheriff and I talked about briefly what he was gonna do. So it's not a surprise to me, so I just want y'all to know that. But I think with the administrator making pay group 18 his assistant making pay group 918. I don't think it's fair to George that she's just right behind him. Do you know what I'm saying? But I will say this, she is a peace officer too, so she's already a deputy. Is that correct? Or she was? So, okay, so I question whether she should be in the same pay group as him, not necessarily, the pay. And she's 4 steps behind him. So, I don't,
What would be your suggestion?
maybe move her down, but keep her pay, you know?
You're talking about pay group 18?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because what are your deputies?
You can go to 17, which is a deputy's position,
Uh-huh.
and you can go out on that scale.
Right.
And keep her pages like it is at 18, 13.
Uh-huh.
She would just be a 17, probably 17, 20, or 21.
So what's the difference between a 17 and 18? Is it
Just pay group.
Okay.
But I think what she's saying is, when you have a subordinate employee, and especially when they're not gonna be an exempt employee, because George is actually gonna be the jail administrator and get that extra money, but he's exempt, so that means, he may work 70 hours a week for his salary.
Right.
Where that person that's only 4 steps behind him, is gonna be gathering, comp time after 40. Or,
Yeah.
actually
Well,
after
he's-
171 hours in a 28-day period,
Well, he's superior to her, you know what I'm
Right,
saying?
I see what you're saying.
So-
So you could say drop to a 17 instead of an 18.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, that's up to
Well, no, I want to know
what
what's
y'all
right,
want to
and
do.
I
Yeah,
don't want to violate any
And-
policy or anything.
so I think it needs to be just kind of considered, because I don't think that, that's fair to the administrative position.
what entails an exempt employee, Jim?
Well, there's a whole, little lot.
I didn't
of
mean to put you on the spot,
qualifications.
but yeah.
And you're talking about one of my weakest areas of law, but
Okay.
One of the main things with an exempt employee is they have the ability to make decisions in the day-to-day, what's going on. They have the ability to make a judgment call. In other words, George wouldn't have to call the sheriff every time he wants to do something with the jail, or maybe switch personnel schedules around, or, move in, maybe he has to move somebody to Lubbock or something, or things like that. He wouldn't have to get an okay to do that. And if you are an exempt position, then of course the main thing is that puts you out of having to be paid overtime or comp time if you work more than 40 hours or whatever law enforcement does during a week. So,
Bless you.
but I think I would tend to agree that probably the assistant administrator is probably shouldn't be considered exempt. And the thing is, you can say any position is exempt. The thing is are they gonna be able to come back and say, well, you owe me, 3 years worth of comp time, and so what is the main thing? But I think the assistant, I would agree, probably would at least have to check with the administrator. It wouldn't make much sense to have the two, more like you had co-administrators, so.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so,
I'll sit down with Ida after we're done and get it hashed out.
and it's on Monday's agenda, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, we can talk about it on Monday. So, hopefully get something sort of worked out on that. So, any other questions about today's agenda? If not, let's go ahead and look at Monday's. Lorena, there's a item to approve the Halfway Fire Department 2020 annual run and authorize their allocation of $12,500 for this year. And Ida's deal she went over today, my situation is gonna be the same. The district attorney has a line item about a donation for the asset forfeiture funds. The sheriff's on there for his personnel item, and Jimmy's on there for his auction. So I believe we've covered all the items that are on the agenda for today and Monday. Any questions about any of those? If not, then we'll stand adjourned today.